Welcome back to another episode of Starting Out, a podcast where we share our stories of starting out in this great big world. We talk about our highlights, trials and tribulations, and lessons we've learned along the way. So, as you are starting your journey, we hope you can learn from us. So, Cor, what's the topic for today?
So, the topic for today is finding creativity in the workplace and how difficult it is as a new grad, basically. Prefacing, what does creativity actually mean? How Neeqs and I also define creativity as well. We're also going to be giving you some tips on how to be creative. And then finally, it's not a starting out story if there are no wacky stories for us to tell from our time in university. So this will be a really good one.
So let's start at the very beginning then. When you think of creativity, what does that mean to you? Do you have a definition that you have?
Yeah, I think initially when I think of creativity, it was more so of creativity in a traditional sense. Creativity as in being an artist, being an actor or an actress in movies. Initially, I thought it had to be a physical end product for you to show. For example, a painting or a movie that you're like, Mom, look, I'm in a play. I'm the next Picasso and this is what I created. So that was my initial idea for years of what I thought creativity was. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think just creativity in general, it can be a very artistic forward definition first. And maybe that's what a lot of people think when they are asked, hey, are you creative? And some people are like, I can't be creative, or I don't have the ability to come up with anything new, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because we are very creative beings. Funny that you say that. I think in this episode, we're going to talk about what creativity means to us in the workplace. Basically, you can be creative in all aspects of your work endeavors. So starting a business is creative, creating spreadsheets are creative, and just having ideas in general in the workplace, right? Even if you are working in a traditional sense of an engineer or anything, you have to be somewhat creative to come up with new ideas and new solutions. Yeah, I think it's changed. I had the same traditional sense of what creativity means, but if anybody asks me now, I'm yeah, I am definitely creative.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because whenever people ask me, they're like, are you creative? I always equated creative to being artsy. See, I'm no, I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to draw. Sure, I know how to play piano, but no way would I be artsy. But really excited to dig deeper into kind of creativity, but the business and the workplace aspect.
Yeah, because this is the Starting Out podcast, being creative is hard when you're in your young professional life. In my own personal journey of very creative and having new ideas in the workplace, it was quite hard. I think one thing that stifled my own creativity was basically everybody was very experienced. So whenever I had an idea, I always was very concerned if I sounded stupid or if I didn't know the company's history. So I would be oh, have we tried this? And it's we've already done that. And I think also I always feared that I didn't want to be that person of we can just do it this way, and having no context of how things work, and then being these ideas actually cannot be done. I think the little nugget is once you're in a corporate setting, I realized that your ideas have a time and place. Basically how these places work is they actually create kickoff meetings during the beginning of the year, or they do mid-year or before the holidays. They will come together, and that is a great time to share your ideas. And it kind of makes sense because they want to be a very constructive, and everybody has their say and all that. What I really learned was you should always test out your ideas, maybe in a safe space first, because I didn't know, because I was okay, I'm really scared of saying my idea, but I need to say it because I was I think I have something here. Yeah, just asking my managers or asking around in a very casual setting. And then when it became a big kickoff meeting, you can see that these ideas have been thought through for a very long time. When you actually say it at these big meetings, then you can actually sound smart, and you can see where people got their expertise from. I think it's a lot of confidence and how you present yourself in these situations.
I really like how you said, specifically in your case, where you felt that there's a specific time and a specific place for you to kind of show and talk about your ideas, as opposed to just have you thought about this? Well, we have. Like, literally look at our business plan, look at like our past history. I think it's really interesting because for a lot of our listeners who might be new grads as well, it's you don't have 5-10 years in that same company, right? Like, there's no way that you would know every single idea that's been like thought of, that's been put into place in like the 5-10 years. You know, like just wait a bit, right? Where it's like you said, the kickoff meeting where they talk about the ideas, but then it's like it's already so well thought out, right? Because they had 3 months to think about it. And then like you come to the meeting, you're like, oh my God, my ideas are like insignificant compared to what I just heard.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes time to really understand and to take time to ask good questions and then generating those ideas. Was it hard for you when you were starting out in your like first job and having ideas?
Yeah, speaking of idea generating, in my case, in my previous role, every Monday we would have something called blue sky thinking. So essentially what it was every Monday we'd have a round table with our team, and then it'd almost be like a brainstorm session. Anything goes, like you could talk about anything. But the thing was, it's almost like you had to come to the meeting with like the next best idea, profit generating, groundbreaking research. And because of that, every Sunday, I would dread going to work because first of all, a lot of people don't like Mondays, right? It's the day right after the weekend. And then second of all, it's like you're expected to have the best idea on Monday mornings. It might not be your best day, but it better be your best idea day.
Oh my God.
And so because of that, it was almost like I thought that I was expected to be creative every week. I thought that every week, especially as a marketer, I had to come up with like the best idea. I had to always like think ahead and be like, yup, this is it. This is the plan I want to do. But I found out that is not the case at all. You are not expected, especially as a new grad, to always come up with the best ideas. And I think Neeqs will also talk about this a little bit where I almost felt like I never had the best ideas and I like almost at a point where I was too afraid to speak at these meetings because I'm like, these people know the company so much better. These people know what's happening down the pipeline. They know what's on the business plan because they've been there for 5 years. But me, 1 month in, can I really contribute something that productive to the meeting? Probably not. But the thing is, as long as they see that you're like trying your best to like be with the program, right? To try to at least understand like what things they might have done in the past, then like I think that's something that I learned when starting out where it was really difficult for me to be creative because I thought I need to have these groundbreaking ideas. But I soon learned that actually wasn't the case and it was okay if like you're able to like take a backseat and be like, okay, like I see a common theme in all of these ideas now.
Yeah, it's almost like the pressure of being like, you're gonna always create something crazy because you're fresh, you see something and all that. I always try to spin it as like, I can give you another perspective. If you want to create lifetime customers, right? These avenues are a great way to actually show like what is a different perspective and all that stuff. But definitely by no means you should be creating. Also, Monday is such a weird day. Like I'm not even awake on Mondays. I think I'm like at my prime on a Wednesday. I'm like, okay, I've seen some stuff. I know what's happening. I know what's going on. Let's do it on Wednesday. Yeah, Monday, that's rough. Obviously, it's been super duper hard with creating and having these ideas, the creativity process and how to create ideas. When you think of like your overall experience, do you think that there are some tips, basically routines or something in your toolkit that you use so that in this role that you are in or in your next role, you can be like, okay, this is how I train up myself or have a good amount of tools in my toolkit so that I can be really productive or I can be really creative?
I think for me, my tip that I kind of adopted as well, and I hope that our listeners will also adopt, is we hope that you can kind of create a routine for yourself to make it at least consistent. Whether it's like idea generation, whether it's like just training yourself to like seek out different ways you can be creative. So I know a lot of the times it's like we hear stories or we hear people who like have groundbreaking ideas. They're like, I thought of it in the middle of the night. And it's almost like a one-time moment where it's like, this is it, right? And I think a lot of the times, I don't think that is the case for a lot of people because a lot of ideas, like, they take time to think about it, and then you have to think about it in different ways, and then you like doubt yourself even. You're like, this is not a good idea. But then it's almost like you flip-flop between like, is this a good idea to like, is this not a good idea? So I guess like going to what the tip is making sure that you're really consistent in terms of seeking out different ways to be creative. So for example, if let's say we're talking about social. So are you going to start following accounts and then you're going to start looking at like different accounts on a weekly basis? You know, on Sunday, let me see what they're posting and let me see what they're kind of up to. As you're scrolling through it, kind of have in the back of your head to think, okay, they're doing this idea. I know how I could implement this idea, change it up, have it as like a new idea in the back of my head.
Yeah, almost like setting up as many ways for yourself to actually get innovative from. So I love that you said like you're going to follow a lot of accounts. At my workplace, we have so many articles. We have a Slack channel called Need to Read. So basically it's anything and everything business related, anything in that industry, random marketing campaigns. And what we're doing here is basically creating many points of entry to actually get into a creative process or into a new idea. I think the ultimate goal here is you're not starting from like a blank page. What you're doing over here is like, you're almost like getting the springboard ready.
I like that point because when I started my work, and I remember specifically, I had to do an Instagram strategy, and I've never done like a whole new Instagram strategy before. So to your point, I initially thought it was a blank slate. I was like, I'm starting from point A, like no one has done this before. It's gonna be, no one in the world has done an Instagram strategy. Mine's gonna be groundbreaking. But it's like sooner or later, you're gonna hit a stump. So then it's to Neeqs' point, it's like she has a Slack channel where it's like the need to read. And it's everything, whether it's like your industry related, business related, it might be cool things that are happening in the world. And so for me, I remember I was looking at different Instagram accounts to see like, what are they doing, right? Because I'm not going to create something revolutionary just out of my ass.
No, right? Not at all.
Yeah, so I really used like different resources and I looked at different accounts to see even what they were doing. We don't condone plagiarizing. Please don't copy.
No, that's not what we're saying.
I want to make that clear.
The Starting Out podcast told me to like just follow up a whole bunch of accounts and then start. No, that's not what we're saying.
It's like to Neeqs' point, it's like a springboard, right? You see different ideas, you see different accounts, and it's like you gather all your ideas and then you see how can I implement this in a new way to my account, to my business. Yeah.
I love this idea that we implemented for ourselves, which is making it easy for yourself. I think like the Need to Read channel on Slack, we have a Google Doc where we did blue sky thinking. One day, not every Monday, Jesus Christ, like that's a lot. We just did one blue sky thinking day and we sat down and wrote out at least 100 ideas for this podcast. And we did this because we've been already thinking about a lot of ideas, but we consolidated in an area where we can actually reference so that when future Cor and Neeqs are crunched for time or are in a creative slump where we could not figure out what we wanted to do our podcast for the week and we could not figure it out, we have 100 ideas to fall back on that you and I have vetted through and thought about. Now, are they actually fantastic topics? No, some of them are like, half of them are garbage, but half of them are pretty decent. And then there are a couple that I'm like, okay, we can get somewhere with it. But it's so much easier to always fall back onto that doc and be like, what have we thought about? And then be like, I don't really like this, but you know what we can talk about? We can springboard from that idea to a next 100%. Idea. And then we're like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. And then we keep going, right? And that would have never been possible if we didn't make it easy for yourself from 100%. The very beginning.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, like, initially, during your brainstorm session or during your blue sky thinking session, literally anything goes. Anything that you think of, and even if you're like, I don't know if this is a good idea, write it on paper. I can't stress this enough. It's like, sure, you might doubt yourself, you might not have enough confidence to think, like, is this a good idea? Is this a good podcast topic? Can I talk about this? Write it down. Because like Neeqs said, it's a springboard to your next idea. Because you're going to look back at this document, let's say 6 months from now. You might either say, it might obviously be like, what was I thinking then? This is such a wacky idea. Or you might be like, okay, like I see where I was going. Okay, then I could go in this direction. I love it so much.
So we like to end it off with, some little crazy stories about idea generation. Because, I like our tips and tricks, but I feel like where people go wrong is where you can always learn the most from. But basically, you are not your ideas. And my crazy story is I was in this group project where you had to basically create a whole bunch of ideas, and then essentially you narrow it down, and then the group votes. So it's a very democratic way. But the unfortunate part was it was like literally a shit show from the beginning, because we were creating all these like ideas on our sticky notes and stuff, right? And we all agreed that it was basically going to be a very democratic process, right? And everybody like puts up their sticky notes. Anywho, we were basically going through all the ideas and we had to eliminate them. And we had a whole board of sticky notes. Somebody who was taking the sticky notes off of into like the dump pile got so upset, like shaking. Oh, I guess we don't want to use this one, huh? This one is going to be stupid.
So
I was
passive aggressive.
Like straight up got so upset that like their idea was taken off to the dump pile. But I was like, there's 50 ideas. We can't use all 50 ideas. Like most of our ideas are going to be in the dump pile, right? Mm-hmm. And that exercise shook that person to their freaking core. They were so upset by what had happened that it really made a really awful environment to create new ideas. You are not your ideas. If your idea gets changed, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna hold your hand right now. It's gonna be okay. What is your story?
Mine goes into that where you are not just your ideas. If someone says they don't like the idea, they're not saying, bitch, I don't like you. For my story, it's like past the idea generation phase. They finish the idea generation and it's like time to show what their ideas brought them to this like one great big thing. I knew someone from intramurals and she was in a visual arts major in university. And I remember as like the final project, they were supposed to, it's almost like their thesis project, I'd say, for the class end. And they had to showcase it. And I remember this wasn't a huge point of it, but on top of showing her painting to everyone, you could also vote on like who the best painting is, and that person would like almost get like a little grade boosted, which I mean like, okay, sure, right? I think it's only like a 5% for like a popularity vote. She spent hours on it. She like missed a couple of intramural games as well because she's like, I'm too busy. Like I need to finish this today. And then I remember she was like, I went to her thesis project and I was like, oh, it looks so good. Like I voted for her. Our teammates voted for her. But then we followed up with her one day. We're like, oh, what happened? Did you end up winning? She's like, I didn't win. They didn't pick mine. They hated it so much. Only you guys voted for it. And she was like visually appalled. No one picked my painting to be the best one. And she started crying. And it's basically like she tied her identity to like her one final thesis project, which she didn't get the popularity vote. I was like, when you have popularity votes, it never goes well. Someone's gonna get hurt. If someone doesn't like your ideas, it's okay. If someone doesn't like your painting, art is subjective. Beauty is subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Realize.
Well, that's a great story because I think what you touched upon is that there is always politics behind ideas. You are creating ideas for people and there's going to be somewhat of a picking process. Not every idea is going to be the best idea, and even if you have the best idea, it might not be your time to shine with that idea.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's not your time now to shine. If they don't pick it, you know what, it's okay. So Neeqs, what is something that you wished you would have known about creativity when you're starting out? And even like now that you're kind of starting out midway through your career, I'd say, what would you say some of the big statements are that you kind of learned throughout your time?
I think maybe this is where, like, when you are actually interviewing, is get a really good sense of how much they like changes and growth. Now, are you joining a company, or are you joining an institution, or are you joining a group that likes the status quo because they know it works? And that product or that service is very mature. If you come up with a new idea, it might not resonate because, hey, they've done it many different ways already and they know that this way works. Because I think one of the big things is that if you can vet out if the environment that you're going to be entering in likes new ideas, or even let's switch it around. It's like, do you want to be a creative person and come up with new ideas and new solutions? Or basically you like stability and you don't want to touch the status quo and all that stuff? I think there has to be like a bit of like a gelling level of creativity and growth and changes, because I think now, personally speaking, I do like changes and I do like growth in that way, because I didn't realize this, but I'm a very creative person in the end. Like, I really like coming up with new ideas and like, have you thought about it this way? Like, can we change this up? I know you guys do it this way, but like, I've noticed like there could be more revenue over here. If they're not susceptible to it, screw all your ideas. Like, it will never like land or stick in any way.
That's a really good point, because obviously when you're starting out, you're not going to be a manager right away. You're definitely going to be reporting to someone, and it's so important to have a really good working relationship with whoever your superior or whoever your boss is. Because to your point, it's almost like, make sure you vet out their personality as well. Are they okay with changes? Are they okay with hearing new ideas, taking the risk, and actually implementing new ideas? If they're not willing to do that, and if they're not willing to like hear your ideas out, or if they do and they're like, no, they stop it right there and they don't support you to like explore your ideas further, get a new environment.
I was gonna say, get out of there. It ain't worth your time, because it's like you're almost swimming upstream.
Yeah.
And you can't even like get your ideas off the ground, and it becomes almost like a waste of time.
Yeah.
It becomes very disheartening, that's what I'm trying to say. It's to the whole process of like, oh, why should I even create a new idea? Because how are you going to use it?
Yeah, right? Because if your boss is always like, no, 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 every time you're like, idea A, idea B, C, it's like, gets shut off, then it's like, I'm not going to tell you what idea D is anymore, because you're not going to want to hear it. I think one thing that I wish I knew and that I know now is, I think Neeqs kind of talked about this, but being really strategic with when and how much you tell about your ideas. Why I say this is, you can come up with really great ideas and you can have really great ideas brainstormed, but if you tell your boss or your coworkers at really random points of time, what are you going to do with that idea at this point in time? I think to Neeqs' point, it's like you talk about it in the kickoff meeting, right? Where like they talk about like what the next best idea is. One thing that I really wish I knew was really just to think about like the company's business plans and to think about like what's coming up in their pipeline. So then if your ideas, for example, require some budget, think about when the next budget planning is. And then it's like, you're not going to tell your idea right after the budget plan is done, because they're not going to want to hear it at the time. They're like, nope, we have no money.
Hopefully our tips are a great way to basically almost get you in the rhythm of always creating ideas and always seeking new inspiration and getting you a little bit closer to executing those ideas and how to execute ideas, especially in the workplace. It's really hard at the very beginning, but if you stick with it and you learn how to create ideas in your field and how to execute them, I have to say it's a very rewarding process at the end. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen right away in your early career, but as you go on, your tip and your recommendations, they can actually do great things.
Yeah. And I think also different people have different ways of coming up with new ideas. Comparing, for example, example, extroverts and introverts. If you're an extrovert, for example, you might be more comfortable and more confident and just maybe like even thinking on the spot and just like saying ideas straight off the bat, as opposed to, for example, if you might be more introverted, it's okay to go away and like noodle on it and think on it on your own and then come back, present a more cohesive idea. I just want to preface that that is also okay, and people brainstorm differently, people have multitude of ideas.
So I hope you got some tips and tricks as to how to create some ideas, and we believe that you are creative and you have great ideas that can change the world. So with that, we'll see you in the next episode. You have just been listening to the Starting Out podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to rate and like the show. Also, leave us a review. It helps us a lot. To never miss an episode, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We love to hear from you. So if you want to chat with us, tweet us at Starting Out Pod. Links are in the description. As always, we are so excited for you to start out on your journey, all while listening to ours. See you in the next one.